Love me the folk. I like merfolk and moonfolk a whole lot.
Welcome to No Clip. I'm Chad Ruthermond.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today we're going to be talking about God of War, a game that was developed by Santa Monica Studios and released in 2018.
There it is.
There it is.
The clarifier.
That was such a clean-ass intro for what it normally is.
You were so ready. You looked up that information.
I looked up that information. And some additional information on the game is that it is a action game in the purest imaginable sense, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Just up top, I want to say that this is a very good game, and I really enjoyed my time with it. But I feel like it's super easy to criticize, and I'm going to come off way more negative than I intend. I feel like it's unavoidable.
Yeah, I think that I have no complaints with this product. I feel as though it will make a lot of consumers satisfied with their purchasing decision.
That is exactly the mindset everyone had while developing it over several years, using all of those terms and reasoning. Oh, God. Well, that makes it very clear that I'm going to be the most negative guy up front. Also, not bad. Nothing about this is bad.
It's so weird. There's all this stuff that I kept coming across as I went through the game.
Yeah.
And I'll admit my opinion on it softened a lot as I progressed. And then the problem area started to show itself. This was the most this episode of the podcast is going to be the most book report episode for me, because I felt like I had preconceived notions going into the game and expectations, and the game really did sort of buck some of my expectations and then totally fell into other ones, and then there were some things that it did that I thought fell in a hole. It's the most average imaginable experience, despite being a fun, cool game generally.
Agree that this is mostly a normal type Pokemon. Very interested to hear what your expectations of this were going into it.
See, I actually, before we get into that, I think I kind of feel like I agree with that statement, but when I step back from it, I feel like that's way too harsh on the game. I feel like this game is very well done, and it's very good. But for some reason, something about it's really hard to explain. Something about it feels unremarkable, even though I feel like it shouldn't.
The game totally lacks any elegance of any kind. It is a game that is being pulled with a lot of money and resources and smart people in all directions simultaneously. This game attempts to be something for everyone and is pretty good at being that, all things considered, especially considering their constraints. But that in itself just has a cost. No matter how well you're able to be the game with RPG elements and gear progression systems and a combination of linear and open world progression and narrative and this harsh action combat system where you're trying to stand up to the God of War name and be really impressive and have all these set pieces. When you have your cake in all areas, even if it's a good fucking cake, eventually you're gonna get full. And this game really lacked focus to me.
As far as my expectations for this game went, and I think this actually does sort of explain go into detail on what we're talking about right now, so this seems like a decent time to just sort of tie the threads together. I played the original God of War and then no other God of War games leading up to this one, and so my experience with the game with the franchise as a whole is pretty grounded in that first game. And so my expectation for what a God of War game is that it's a hack and slash action game and Kratos pushes a box around often pushes boxes. And the game has a weird way of being exactly that, but then also having 5 other things on top of it. So that's kind of where it met expectations, where I was I knew that I was going to be running around smashing a guy, and then later, in a downtime in between the smashing a guy and the next guy to smash, there would be a box pushing puzzle. And they did more with the box pushing puzzles than just push boxes, which is a welcome relief from what was essentially my least favorite part of God of War 1, which was the puzzles, which all felt like weirdly out of place. They feel more natural here. But that's really kind of, that's the ebb and flow. Ebb, combat, flow, box pushing, and that's about it. I'm using box pushing as like a metaphor here. There's a lot more that you do in this one.
Oh,
There's
yes,
actually very little box pushing in
Yeah,
this.
there's only like 4 or 5 boxes.
And they have to be like colossal stones so that it doesn't look weird that Kratos is pushing them slowly.
Or like a hog, or like a living being of some kind.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I feel like one of the reasons, at least as I was thinking about this as we're talking about the general feel of the game here at the beginning, is it feels really familiar because it leans so hard into like the Naughty Dog design philosophy. And I think that's one of the big things. While I like that kind of thing and even feel like it works here really well, it doesn't feel original. It feels really derivative.
It is extremely derivative.
Yeah, I feel like that's my thesis on why this game, I didn't think it was as great as maybe I should have.
I feel like the parts of this game that lean into that the aforementioned Naughty Dog philosophy are the parts of the game that, I mean, I don't know, I have like pros and cons for everything, but I feel like it's all negative when it comes to the stuff in this game that reminds me of Uncharted. Because even Naughty Dog knows, even Uncharted the series knows that Uncharted 1 is not a game that they can release now. Like, it was awesome when it came out because it was cool and it looked really good and there was stuff to do and it showed off hardware. And they did a good job with storytelling. And Uncharted 4, they do a lot of that same stuff because they feel like people expect it, but then they add a lot more shit to do otherwise. There are a lot more ways to fail in modern Uncharted games.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
This game does not have a great diversity of ways to fail.
Yeah, and it takes the climbing system basically straight from Uncharted, which is a huge mistake because there's nothing to do while climbing. It's just like holding a thing.
Yeah, it every time you have to do it in this game, it just feels like it's a load screen.
Yeah.
Like,
It probably is literally a load screen.
It's just between areas, and it's just a way to keep you playing instead of having to watch a spinny logo.
Yeah.
But you gotta realize that there's a cost to that too, right? Like, because obviously that was one of the main pushes with this game, especially in interviews and descriptions. The game has attempts to be like one continuous shot. Like there's no cuts or anything. I have no idea what the point of that is.
Dude, I'm glad that you say that because it feels like such a half-step non-thing.
Yeah.
Because, like, games, like, since the last console generation, it's been a thing to have, like, the not cutscene where you remain, like, you keep control. And, like, pushing it that, like, little bit further to have, like, no cuts unless you, like, die, you don't even notice it.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like it was probably really hard and, like, a waste of time and effort to do that for something that, like, no one's going to appreciate. It feels like a thing you do to put it on the box.
Yeah. Like, and think of not just all the resources that were put into place to make sure that can happen. Think about even once the goal is accomplished, like, you still have to load in the actual, like, world traversal areas that you walk through whenever you use those silly magic doors. Like, it actually makes the amount of literal time before you, the player, can do the next thing that you want to do be longer because you're loading additional things.
Yeah, I feel like, and it does the thing that I feel like is going to become more and more prevalent until it's just ubiquitous across video games, where it does try and cut out those loading screens by putting in things that I hate, that I would really prefer a loading screen to, like climbing or riding an elevator or uselessly running around in a circle in an ethereal environment that I don't care about.
Yeah, the climbing doesn't bother me as much. The thing that, like, drove me crazy was waiting for the world tree branches to come out.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, you pick the realm, and you lock it in, and it like the light show happens, and then you wait for like 20 seconds before the branches come out, and you can walk across it. Like, gee, and the quick travel door.
Yeah.
Like, it was
Takes
weird.
a while
yeah,
to
and
come
like
up.
you just run. Yeah, well, it takes a while to even for him to step through it, which
Yeah.
is weird. And then you have to like run along the path, or you don't have to. If you just wait, it'll show up.
Yeah, the door will disappear.
Because you're a normal person who wants something to happen, you're probably just going to run along the path until it shows up, and it feels like you're running a comically long time. And you're like, man, this is just repeating over and over again. It's like that thing in Inception, like the paradox staircase.
Yeah.
You know, it's really weird.
And it's also inconsistent with with everything that Kratos does already. Like, waiting for the world tree branches, like, literally through the whole game, you make, like, 30-foot horizontal leaps. Like,
you could
just
easily jump across that.
Yeah, and every time that I'm climbing back down a wall, it just feels like an insult because, like, at one point you fell off of a statue and fell straight to the ground and was fine.
There's at least 4 or 5 story moments where you fall off of something really high.
Yeah, and then just get up.
Yeah.
It's not like he goes, oh man,
Yeah.
I wish there was a ladder.
This game kind of smartly doesn't have you backtrack a lot if you kind of just follow the main path.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the game, it's like, go back to your home. And I tried to just walk back because I tend to like to do that in games and like not use fast travel if I can avoid it personally. And you just can't. Like, there are, like, literal, like, spots that block you from going back, and you have to fast travel, and that was so frustrating to find in my way.
Yeah. Here's, like, a good way that won't come off, hopefully, as overly negative about my opinion of the whole continuous shot loading screen excuse thing. Like, in accomplishing this goal, they have removed a bunch of negatives from the game, but that is not the same thing as something being praiseworthy. The absence of a problem is not like the same as the existence of something perfect. They did not do. I don't see that and go like, wow. I got that into like, oh, good. There's not a problem here. And there's lots of other small ancillary concessions that they had to make to essentially provide an experience that is still kind of just as easy to see through from the player's perspective as like the Metroid Prime games on the GameCube.
Yeah. You'll note that on the Rascal episode, we did not go, this game is basically unplayable, but it didn't make the PlayStation 1 literally catch on fire when I put the game disc in, so that's a positive. Like, you just expect things to not go catastrophically wrong in the same way that you don't expect that people will intentionally do things that are bad.
Well, I do like the metaphor that we have become so advanced as future tech gamers that we are now comparing the existence of loading screens to our consoles catching fire in front of us.
I'm really impatient. All right.
How long do you think it'll take to get to the point where playing a game with a loading screen will be like enough of a deterrent that like people won't even bother playing that game anymore?
That's
like, you think like kids now, like if they put in like Crash Bandicoot or something and it has like loading screens, they'd be like, what the fuck is this?
I think that's
like, when are we going to get to that point?
It's a surprisingly complicated question
for
a bunch of reasons. First, a lot of those old games you're talking about aren't going to have those screens when the kids go back to them because they're going to be emulated on devices.
But they'll still have the screen that'll come up that'll say loading. Like, that's still going to happen because it's programmed into the game.
There'll be a transition, but it's going to be mitigated the further we are in the future, even with old shit.
That's true.
And, like, that's a goal that's always going to be relative over what the load is delivering, and it's hard to predict, like, the future shit that might be possible. Like, if it does some kind of crazy VR thing that requires loads, like,
fair enough,
it could completely change the perspective of whether that becomes accepted or not based on the kind of stuff that can be accomplished.
It's just, I guess another, like, sub-question is, do you think we'll ever, like, gaming's moving towards a point where, like, load screens are going to become a non-thing, like, totally? Like, it's just going to be, like, the standard that like you build your game as to not have load screens even as like the technology increases?
I feel like the popularity of online games makes me say no, and the reason is because I think people are used to a brief wait period between.
Yeah, like to me, it's like such a non-issue, but like I feel like it gets talked about a lot as like a positive thing.
Yeah, but
like
you
no loading, like
Yeah.
To be topical, the Xbox E3 conference, they were like, faster load times, no load times. It's gonna be so fast, you guys. Like that was like what they talked about like for like 5 minutes. They just kept saying that in different ways over and over again.
I mean, it is a thing that people would generally want. If somebody asked you, like, would you prefer long waits or short waits?
Right.
You'd be like, I would, the short waits, obviously. But it's something they don't really need to say because it's the next step in technology. That's just the way that technology works, is that
Right.
it makes old things work better on new things. Like,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah,
words
it
that
just
need to be put
it
in
makes me
order.
wonder about people's expectations for new things, though.
Yeah.
And that's part of where the ambiguity comes in, right? Because if we wanted no loading screen games as an industry standard, that could exist right now.
It's gonna ratchet budgets up even more.
Well, no, that's not what I mean. I don't mean taking what you have now and also making loading not a factor. I mean just scaling back to the visual fidelity,
Right.
To lower degrees, and you could easily accomplish that. But people don't want that. They're conflicting wants between no loading
Right.
screens and fucking beautiful Alfheim shit.
Well, I like beautiful
Chad.
Alpine shit. I thought was funny. But to get back on topic with God of War,
Yes.
you'd have to take the good and the bad, obviously. And I feel like this is just another thing where I feel like there was positive elements and negative elements to it. Because while I hate the fact that I have to climb up and down the well in the woods to get back to the fucking witch's house, I also actually like the way that the boat works in this game. Like, I think it feels, one, satisfying to to row around in. Two, I like Momir, not
Mimir.
yeah, Mimir's
Mimir, yes.
Momir Vig, yeah.
Gibberish,
Mimir's,
gibberish.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, stark contrast to Hellblade, where there were just like these stones with lore on them, and there was like a narrator, albeit a good narrator, would just read them to you. In this game, it's contextualized, and like a character is actually telling a story to you, and it's entertaining.
Right. It's great.
Yeah,
It's
like,
really good.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, and they characterize him really well. Like, I think of the characters in the game, he might legitimately be the only one that I consider, like, great. Like,
Yeah.
I think that his character is very good.
Yeah,
And
he was the much-needed comic relief, and it
God.
was done so well.
as opposed to the attempted comic relief of the dwarves, which always failed. Like, the Brock's dialogue is, like, hysterical because it's hysterical in like a B movie bad way,
Yeah.
because it's like they just were like, this guy curses a lot, so he now just uses the word bastard, like we would say, as like a filler word. He'd be like, hey, you want a cup of coffee, you fucking son of a bitch?
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck? Like, I just walked up here.
Well,
And
at the-
Kratos, who seems like the kind of short-tempered guy who murders gods, does not then just chop his head off and walk away.
I kind of got the vibe that he viewed them kind of like children, or he was just like, whatever, let them do, But at the very end of the game, Brock is like, oh, Thimblewinter's coming. I can feel it in my scrot.
Yeah.
And he says that like twice, and it's just like, what? Somebody wrote that.
Yeah.
And then somebody delivered that line. Like,
And no one questioned it.
yeah,
Even
like
one
yeah,
time.
they were, both of them, Brock and Sindri, were very like one note, kind of like caricatures, to the point where it felt intentional, I think, but like,
They gave them too big of a role.
yeah, they were.
yes.
You ran across them a little bit too often for that to not get a little bit grating.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm really stuck on the dialogue because it's very bad. Like, I remember at one point there's just like a thing. He's like, I tell the kid the story, but I feel like you wouldn't appreciate it because of all of the drinking and fucking in it. And I was like, he has like the writing sensibility of like a 19-second long punk rock song from 1994. Like, I don't understand. We're gonna bring it down.
Sorry, it's just all punk rock comparisons. Okay. Hard, grab the wheel, turn. You know how we commonly compared Nier Automata to like old PS2 games in its general design sensibility?
Yes.
This is that for PS3 games. This is a game that saw The Last of Us and was like, let's do that and more. And they literally just did more things and not really.
The God of More.
Can we the God of More? That is. Can we just establish that right now? I'm never saying God of War again because of the ambiguity. I am only calling this God of More.
This is God of More. Okay,
Yeah.
sure, why not?
Yeah, I had something for this, and now I blanked because of that car that beeped outside.
Oh.
Damn you, car!
Fuck you!
Oh no, it felt a lot like combining The Last of Us with like Zelda or something. Like the Lake of Nine is like the obvious like hub area, and then everything like it's like Hyrule Field, and then everything like kind of branches off from that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm a fan of.
It's like
Right.
if you had to go to Hyrule Field, and then you always had to go to Lon Lon Ranch, and then you always had to get on top of a cow, and then you had to spin that cow
Yes.
very slowly in like 25-degree increments to exactly the direction you needed the cow to be, and then you could get off the cow and go to the other temples and stuff.
Right.
Before we get too far from the original point here,
Yes.
I actually do kind of disagree because I don't think this is really like the culmination of PS3 game design.
It's not a culmination. I didn't think Nier Automata was a culmination either. I just think
Oh,
it was
yeah.
emblematic.
That's okay, fair. But I also feel like God of More is more of just like an ascended PS2 title. Like I feel like it actually feels more like somebody looked at what worked in Devil May Cry and what worked in the original God of War and what worked in like fucking Mark of Cree or whatever. Like there's my deep pull for this one. In other just like action adventure games, and just say, what if we just tried to like put a period on the sentence of action adventure like buff guy games.
Yes.
and like I feel like this succeeds at some level of being like the ultimate form of the original God of War.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way, where this is what PS2 games like wished they could be. It very much feels like an adventure game in that vein of like the kind of things those games aspired to do at the time, which they never really got to that level before they were abandoned for new design trends.
Right.
I feel like, it is straight up insulting for you to suggest that buff guy games culminated in the PS2 era before Gears of War existed. That's a buff guy game.
That's a buff guy shooter though. Where these are different things.
Shoulder men.
Not God of War, but Gears of War. Gears is special. It's very special in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it's special for the fact that it's a game about very strong people who use guns and therefore don't need to be very strong. And it's like kind of a
They need to
unique
be-
aesthetic where everyone is a football player. But
Literally.
in some cases, literally.
They need to be really strong to force that chainsaw through a body.
And yeah, even though the chain, that would make sense if they were sawing them in half with like a sword.
Motions back and forth.
A chainsaw doesn't make it
Saw.
effortless to just push through a human body like butter.
I don't know.
Like, it's going to require a lot of force to push a chainsaw through a
How
person.
much chainsaw experience do you have?
I've used a chainsaw and cut down a tree before. It's not like...
Just move on.
It requires a lot of actual sawing on your part.
It is in fact not just a lightsaber.
Yeah, no.
Oh damn.
Just from the descriptions I always get of chainsaw safety videos, if you just like stop paying attention to it for 1 second, it'll just take your leg off like a lightsaber.
I mean, that
as far
could
as I
happen
can
because
tell.
they do get caught on things and then can get dislodged.
kick.
Yeah, like it can definitely happen.
Yeah.
But it
But
not.
they also
it-
have a mind of their own and are murderous bastards. So.
Yeah, which is why they have to be so buff in Gears of War to contain the dark spirit of the chainsaw
yes.
and break it to their will like a bluff stallion.
Hey, was there a second point after just being against calling this a buff guy game?
Yes, which is also related to Gears of War, which is if this game wanted to be the best version of the PS2 era buff guy game, then it would not have picked a third-person over-the-shoulder camera. It would have picked a better camera system for that goal than this. This takes, I presume, this is one of the things that's being pulled against by the direction of the narrative, where like the camera wants to be close so you can feel like gritty and in the thick of things with Kratos, but like it's so close that it's like actually inconvenient, and they had to make a bunch of design concessions to it.
Behind you, son. Yeah, like that shit. Yeah.
And all the stupid like circle pointer thing, and like there's a bunch of systems, and you can tell that the enemies are less aggressive when they're out of your field of view. Like there's a bunch of compromises they have to make to get the camera that close that like God of War 3 even didn't have.
Yeah, even like tougher enemies are less aggressive even when they're in your field of vision if you're engaged with somebody else. Like I remember there was a time when they put you against two of the travelers, and it feels like that should be a really tough fight because those enemies take a long time to take down. But one of them just stood there and watched me fight the other one, and it's like I don't necessarily like. Part of me is like, hey, I appreciate that you're giving me the consideration of this one-on-one fight, but like I feel like maybe I'm being cheated out of something here.
Yeah. One thing I will agree that is very PS2 about this game is repeated use of established mechanics in ways that feel like padding and also kind of don't. You know the feeling I'm getting at? Where like you do the same kind of thing where it's like 80% of the same like 10 times, and there's exactly enough variability to it where it doesn't get annoying.
Yeah, so we're getting into stuff that like I think is that I actually do really appreciate about the game.
Yeah.
That did sort of make me feel nostalgic. And like the seal destruction puzzle we'll take as an example because I actually like this as a concept generally. In that you can tell that they were working with the same assets, the same general idea, and like you even sort of self-restrict yourself when you walk into see one of those no-near chests. That you're like, okay, well, I'm now in an arena where my goal is to find and break these 3 seals or hit these 3 bells. And so it's like a self-imposed or a designer-imposed challenge, but it's like something that you self-regulate because you can leave at whatever and just be like, I don't care about this. But you can tell that the designers actually had a chance to take the same materials and move them around and adjust the pieces in a way to make each one different or more challenging in a different way. Like the one that sticks out to me is there's one that's in Helheim where you like pull a block. More block pushing. It's very important to this one. And there's like a window on the side of it. It's like there's a thing in here, so you have to know to push it somewhere else and move around. It's like they never did that before. But they're using all the same constituent pieces that they did before, but it's a cool new challenge because of it.
Yeah. I liked those for like the first like handful, like the first 2 upgrades I got from them, and then they became like comically tedious to me. Cuz like it's literally the exact same thing each time, but with the 3 pieces you need in like a unique location. And like it needed, I think, a little bit more like visual or something else different about it other than just these are in different places.
It kind of it falls
because it's always just throw the axe at it. It's always the same challenge too. It's just that you need to find the pieces and you don't know where they are.
Right. I mean, there's some that are like timing challenges, like the Winds of Hell and all that. There's one on like an island that I think is really good. We have to carry the winds around. Yeah,
like every once in a while there'll be one where they hide one in a really unexpected place. I'm like, yes, I'm so smart for finding this. But for the most part, that fell flat after I was like a third of the way in for me.
It has variety in the same way that a book full of Where's Waldo's have variety. And that seems more dismissive than I think I'm intending it to be.
Right.
Like, there's a reason books full of Where's Waldo's exist, just because they can actually be engaging and fun.
And you know what you're getting into with a Where's Waldo book.
Precisely.
You want to find Waldo 12 times when you open that Waldo book.
On the back of the box for God of War, it does not say, like 12 interesting seal finding puzzles on it. Like,
it does not. I'm saying that's still fine. It's just not as good as having a set of mechanics and being forced to use them in ways that are surprising to you. You are never surprised that you have to find these seals and then throw an axe at them.
Right.
Or at least very, very rarely are you surprised at the specific challenge that's been prescribed to you when you find the chest. And that for me is identical to almost everything in this game, including just base combat, where it's like I do the same thing over and over again, about 80% of the time, and then there's just like just enough different things that you have to do occasionally where it doesn't like hurt me or like I don't get like annoyed. Like I'm never mad at this game. It's just a game in a way that honestly, you're correct. A lot of like PS2 era games were for a lot of kids with like no time or responsibilities.
Yeah. What difficulty did you play the game on?
I played here. I got a story on this.
Okay.
Can I story time this?
Yes, you can.
All right.
I'd be insulted if you didn't.
Thank you.
I'm upset that you have a story about this because I know that in the end it's just going to end up being like, oh, okay, so Chad was a bitch.
No. This is a game that they're like weird. It's okay, but constantly had me running into minor annoyances level problem like we've been talking about for almost the full duration of the first half. Where I played it on normal, and their game had all of these systems, tons and tons of fucking other interactions you can unlock, lots of stuff that you could do, especially with the axe throwing mechanics, where I felt like flowing into that in combat could create really cool circumstances, but like many games that we play on this podcast never actually challenged you enough to force you to use those mechanics. So I was like, okay, this is exactly the circumstance where when you feel that way, you raise the difficulty. So I raised the difficulty once, and then again at two separate different occasions. This is one of those games where the higher difficulty is literally just more damage and health, and doesn't actually have you need to create more complex solutions to new challenges. It just punishes you horribly if you fail, and makes you repeat the same fine but not necessarily different paths to success for a longer period of time. It just makes it 2 to 3 times longer to kill every enemy, and you're punished more if you mess up. And it's terrible, so I turned it back down to normal, because that was still better than actually trying to go through it on hard.
Yeah, I played it on hard, and I found that made it like challenging enough to keep me engaged. Like I found that like while the combat system I don't think is great or anything, it's still pretty good, and I felt like it like attained this level of variety that I feel like Kingdom Hearts wants, where every ability that Kratos has feels satisfying to use, and I found myself cycling through them in a natural way. It's like I was like parrying things, and that feels real good to do, but then like once that starts getting old, I'm like backing up and winging the axe at a guy, and that feels good, and like tripping him and like having Atreus shoot him and then using like big cleave move on him. Like every time like something kind of got because I agree, like I would start doing the same things over and over again, but then once that started to get a little old, I would just switch to another thing that also felt good to do. So I found myself like naturally cycling through all my abilities in like an organic way that made it fun for me.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to commend about the combat system in this game, just to sort of like provide the opposite like sort of perspective on it, is while I agree that it never really challenges you to it doesn't ever force you to switch up the way that you're playing, to the point where like I'm fairly certain that you could probably beat the game by only throwing the axe at things. It does do the skill unlocking tree. Well, we'll talk about that later, maybe, if we even care. But the abilities that you actually get, I feel, are so much better implemented than a lot of these tend to be.
In what way?
I felt like I was naturally getting into those moves from situations that I would normally be in. Like, if you ever played like I almost just said if you've ever played like Bayonetta, despite the fact that we literally all played it and talked about it right now, there would be moves that I would see in the store that were like, like special, like triggered commands. And they would be like, to do this move, press circle, 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 triangle, hold R2, and then tap L1 once, and then do a quarter circle on the left stick. And I'm like, never going to do that. Like, 100%. Even if I set out with the explicit goal of doing that, I will do it one time and then forget the button combination, and it's not going to matter to me. And I feel like a lot of the abilities they give to Kratos, while a couple of them sort of fall into that same not-so-hot territory, a lot of the time we're like, stop attacking for a second, and you switch stances, and then you do like a more like crowd control based move, and that's just something that like it just occurs to you to do, and so you do it, and I felt like most of the abilities did that pretty well, except for the rage tree, which I didn't use rage nearly enough to like warrant a lot of those skills.
I would agree that like I found myself like as unlike I just bought all the moves because this is one of those games where you just get enough experience to get everything.
Yep.
So I just like got them all and would just end up using them on accident, like without trying to, and like you just kind of like naturally discover the button combinations on your own, and it would be charitable to compare it to like Mario, but like in Mario games, like you end up like they signpost some moves, but a lot of them you just kind of figure out by playing the game, and I found like a similar kind of thing in this game with Kratos' moves. Although I do wish you could turn some of them off. There was a move where like he would jump away and throw the axe, like the Kingdom Hearts thing,
one.
like you
Back
throw
dodge,
the Keyblade, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like I would like hit the guy and like stun them, and then he would like jump away and throw the axe. I don't remember the button combination, but like that happened to me a bunch, and I'm like, I don't want to jump away from the enemy. Like I want to hit them right now, and like that kept happening, and that was annoying.
That's the game attempting and overcompensating to try and read your intent. I think a lot of the reason, Chad, that it's very natural to get into these like combo moves and button combinations in this game specifically is because a lot of the combo moves in this game that you can do are actually just like reskins of things you would already want and try to do in the pre-existing systems, and the buff is just it gets an animation and it's better in certain ways, like dodge and then attack, right? Like you could already kind of do that. Like you probably tried to dodge to the side and then hit someone.
Right.
Now there's just a move specifically for that, and now you can like intuitively combine it with heavy attack instead to do a heavy version.
Right.
Like these are all things that you would already try and think of and try to do within the pre-existing systems. And so when you have a system like that, where the game is now trying to take and predict interactions that players would normally do, but then prescribe like a specific animation to it, is when you're going to run into circumstances where you just want to go backwards and attack, and the game thinks you want to do the cool, like, oh, I'm going to dodge real far and throw the axe and get a bunch of distance as the more exaggerated version.
You would
of that
almost
move.
always jump out of range for that to even hit.
Yeah,
which was really weird to me.
There were a couple of things that like specifically seemed like they'd never like. Tell me if there's a system I'm just like missing here and didn't know. But when you do the parry light attack where he like just bong like hits somebody with the shield, occasionally, and I've tried this on the same enemy, and by tried this I mean did on every enemy 100 times a piece, because it's just like naturally after I parry I want to hit R1 because I feel like I'm gonna riposte to them, like I'm playing Dark Souls, but I'm not. And he goes bong, and then occasionally the enemy will just go like way out, like hundreds of miles in the distance, and then other times they just kind of like fall over and you can actually do the intended combo.
Yeah, I watched a couple of videos on this game that like dug into the combat system, and there seems to be a bit of like weirdness in the AI. Like somebody suggested that they have the enemies queue moves, so that like it's like they'll do this move immediately followed by this move, and you can't interrupt that. That was like their like. That's what they intuited. We don't know if that's true or not, but it does kind of seem like that, because sometimes you can just blast a dude, as you said, and other times you'll hit them with the blast move and they'll just hit you.
Yeah.
You know, because they had a move queued. So that seems like a reasonable explanation, but like weird little things like that happen, and you'll notice it more and more as you play.
Yeah, and that's like it kind of emblematic of everything that we've already talked about the game. Feels like it's a meshing of genres that don't necessarily like go together, because like the move where you hit someone and they go 1,000 miles away is great. Obviously,
it does make you feel super strong.
Yeah, but that feels more at home in a Dynasty Warriors type game than it does in like sort of a one-on-one action combat game.
I feel like it would also feel a lot more natural if it was a fist move. Like hitting a dude with a shield doesn't really feel like it should launch them 50
Right.
feet.
I imagine like having them just like go from a standing position to a laying down.
Yeah, like
position
fall on their back,
instantaneously.
not like fly across.
I want to explore the physics of this because I feel like the only reason you feel that way, Andy, is because of decades of like ingrained pop
Oh, yeah.
culture knowledge of like when you hit someone with a fist and you have super strength, they go forever. But as soon as that's like put through a medium,
Yeah.
the like artificiality of that begins to be revealed.
Yeah, and it even feels like they accounted for it a little bit because he hits him with like the flat end of the shield, so it's like a punch, and it also has like a force like that comes off of it, like he's channeling energy that he shoots out of it, and it launches him.
Rage particles.
Rage particles.
It has like the exact same particle effect as like the Fusro Da does.
That's the great compare. It is exactly.
It's like a
that.
sonic boom,
Yep.
and it makes a gong noise, which like.
Yep.
I don't know if this is something we want to go into at all, but like
Gongs?
the sound design in this game makes the combat actually feel really good. Like things that I complain about a lot when I play action games is if they get the feel right, as for like the weightiness of the weapons and your recovery animations and shit like that. That's like weirdly very important to me. And this game, I think, like every enemy feels like a man-sized watermelon. Like as you hack into them, and it makes these perfect sounds, and there's just like the amount of resistance you want. Like I'm kind of surprised thinking back on it that I wasn't playing it in VR. The fact that I was hitting an R button and not literally swinging my arm at something is kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, the axe is fantastic. Like they had this custom system that they built where the axe would actually like get stuck in the enemy model for a second before it would swing through, so it would like make impact,
So good.
get stuck and then swing through, like, and it feels awesome.
The animation in general is just the best thing about this game.
Oh yeah, it's really. I mean, and I will extend that to also just graphics as meaningless as that. Like check out the graphic. Okay, let's pump up the graphics in level 3.
Yeah, no, the presentation overall is fantastic.
Oh my god. There are going to be people who don't know what that is. We've lived in a world where our entire lives, you could just say that to people with graphics on level 3, and every single nerd you will ever meet knows exactly what that means.
Yeah, because the commercial played on repeat 3 times per commercial break on G4 or
Correct,
Tech TV.
Yeah. I think they did such a good job with the axe that the inclusion of the Blades of Chaos felt like unnecessary to me.
I'm of two minds on this personally.
Like,
Yeah.
I understand why they did it, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like they delivered such a great alternative that they didn't need it.
Right.
And they didn't make them feel distinctive enough in the actual shit that you do with both
Right,
weapons.
and they feel like they're
Which
ripped.
is mash R1.
Yeah,
Murder.
like I know that I'm sure there's differences. I don't remember, but like they feel so just ripped straight from the original games, and like they don't quite fit here because they're mostly like crowd control weapons. And you do just feel like you're button mashing when you use them. Like the axe is very much like one-on-one combat. Like you it's more precise. You know what you're doing. You can execute exactly what you're thinking in your head. With the chain, just like you're just like hitting dudes over here and over there and behind you.
Right.
Like you're meant to switch to them for crowd control in this game, but like it always. The whole, like, you don't get them to like 2/3 of the way in, and it's like so not the way you've been playing so far.
Yeah.
That I found myself mostly just using the axe unless I was in Helheim or there were a bunch of dudes.
Honestly, I agree with you, but only because of how good the axe throw and return system was.
Yeah, it's
I swear to
fantastic.
God, if it was a little bit worse, if that animation on when it comes back to your hand was even slightly worse, I would have switched. It would have been probably better for the game overall because I would have been more willing to switch off the axe. The animation is too good that actually made me like overly attached to it.
Yeah, the like recall thing is also just hysterical in like how far. Like I'm actually surprised at how far they let it go before they shortcut it. Like where you'll be really far away from where you threw the axe, and he's just like.
Oh, he does it automatically?
No, like he's like when you call it back, you're just holding your hand up in the air for like 7 seconds while you just hear like bing bong clang, and you're like, what the fuck?
The Thor
really
joke.
good.
Yeah.
It just creates the Thor joke.
Yeah, because I wanted to test that, but never ended up doing it. Just like throwing the axe into like the side of Kratos' house, and then like just going to like wherever, and like seeing if it ever makes it automatically come back to you.
It does. It does. There is a point.
And it's really far though.
It's shockingly far, but it exists. I feel like that's you're booing not the developers, you're booing realism. You're booing the constraints of reality, and that had to be that way.
Because like once you get the Blades of Chaos, you could just leave it somewhere and never need it.
I think there are enemies that will only take damage from the axe.
Why does it even have the little thing on his back? You can just, no matter where the axe is in the narrative, you can just always have it.
Because you just want to carry it.
But that's the point. You can just fucking
You can just leave it somewhere. Yeah,
you can throw it off a cliff.
It's more convenient to not have to do that.
And not have to wait the 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, I guess there are real world constraints. What's the max speed of the axe? Does it continuously accelerate?
Yeah, because there's no way that it like reaches. It continually accelerates, becomes infinitely massive. He catches it. It's like humongous.
That's what
relativity.
That's what triggers Ragnarok. Is that the Leviathan axe hits the speed of light. To me, it felt like it didn't just keep accelerating. Like it felt like it had a top speed to me.
Yeah,
visually.
I'm not
But
sure.
I might just be and physically. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's stop. And then come back after we take a break.
That sounds good.
Sounds great.
All right, let's do it.
I've got something I want to talk about.
All right. Okay. I mean, we left a lot to discuss still. So.
Plenty more.
This game is very deep. Literally in the way that a hole is deep.
There's like a really deep lake that lowers in water level twice throughout the course of the game.
It does, yeah.
I don't mean deep as a different like tense of depth. I mean deep as in like there's just a bunch.
There's a lot in the game.
If you had to shovel through it, it would take a long time.
Is this on the podcast right now?
I don't. Your decision.
You had to say
always
welcome
your
back.
decision.
This is not
Until I
podcast
say
material
welcome
until you
back.
say so.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. And I want to play off of what you said about it being deep a little bit, because I feel like it sacrifices its own like potential in order to put more stuff in the game than really needs to be there.
Yes.
To the point where the narrative ending of the game feels really limp as compared to how it could be.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that statement.
I guess, yeah.
I mostly agree, but kind of disagree with your first statement. Les, I feel like all of the things that are in this game could potentially have been implemented in a way that was good. Well, at least most of it.
Most agree.
Like, a lot of it is, like, a not fully developed, crippled version of a thing that could have been good. But, I mean, this game's already, like, so expensive and, you know, budget. The bane of many AAA games. But, like, stuff like the exploration specifically, because, like, that's my jam. We all know that I love that shit. But, like, in this game, it feels really unsatisfying because of, like, Kratos' movement, I think. You can't jump.
Right.
And, like, all you can really do is kind of, like, stiffly walk around. It's, like, the way he moves in combat feels mostly pretty good. But, like, outside of combat, he feels super limited. And, like, you just can't really move around the environment in, like, a smooth way. Like, I feel like just moving around and, like, finding treasure and things could have been a lot more enjoyable if Kratos could vault over things like Geralt, or, like, kind of move a little bit smoother like Aloy or something. Like, there's a lot of other video game protagonists that, like, are way less stiff than Kratos. And, like, that one really stuck out to me, like, as, like, a missed opportunity. Because I like exploring the lake. And that fact that, like, the water level lowers twice and more gets, like, revealed, like, super intriguing. And I liked rowing the boat around, hearing the stories. And I like the idea of hunting for treasure and doing side quests and things. on the lake, but it always kind of felt hindered.
I kind of want to spin off of this real quick before I move on to the second point about like the ending of the game.
Oh, right, yeah, I totally sidetracked that.
But that is sort of like that was my initial thing to take away from the game, and it never really remedied itself at all. This style of level design feels really outmoded these days because it's like an open world game that isn't in any way an open world game. Like it seems almost
it's one of those
specifically
big rooms games.
it's a
Big room!
For you long-time listeners.
But because it feels like it's an open world game that is specifically designed to fight against being an open world game at all times. Kratos as a character hates being sidetracked, and
they're always making excuses for why he's doing side quests.
Yeah.
It feels super forced.
And it makes me feel like Atreus, who we haven't even mentioned until now, which is weird,
No, it's not.
is supposed to like be the guiding hand on this, but he doesn't serve enough of a narrative purpose to justify it at all.
Also, you explicitly in the narrative give no shits about his wants or needs.
Yeah, like it's super weird.
I disagree with that.
Okay, only if you define needs very paternalistically.
Yeah.
Only if you define needs as like what I want him to be.
Because I feel like in the beginning of the narrative, Kratos kind of starts out as the kind of dad you'd think he'd be, where he's like comically stern and short with his son.
Shitty in all ways.
And like over the course of the game, he becomes way more like a normal dad.
Agreed that the dadness is on like an upward curve.
The dadness multiplies.
Yes. But
Dead Rising.
Dad Rising.
God of More, Dad Rising, 2018.
Jesus. Okay, now we know the sequel. But I found absolutely every character except for the head guy in this game to be just the most drudging. Like, until the end, when there was some semblance of progression among the relationships of those involved, and you became more dad-like, as you described, everything about listening to people talk to each other in this game for me was a chore. Not because the voice actors were bad, they were fine, not for any like mechanical reasons. The game has infinite money, and you can see how much money that it had constantly, with all the polish that it put on all the systems that it didn't need. But I just don't like the people. I don't want to hear Kratos talk through the vast majority of the game. Like okay, example, Chad. You're gonna be Atreus here, okay?
All right.
I want you to tell me like a very reasonable request that a child under a lot of stress would have.
Can we go home?
Murder is sometimes justified. Everyone hates you, and the gods don't care about how you feel. Go away and do this thing that I asked you to do.
See,
Can I fly as a god?
No. You can't do anything that you want ever.
I actually found like Atreus to join the ranks of like 9S as a character that I thought that I would not like at all at the beginning of the game that ended up really growing on me.
You're going to have to justify this pretty hard, I think, for both of us.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I feel like
think
Kratos has an actual character arc, and he grows as a character, whereas Atreus feels like a ping pong ball in like one of those extreme ping pong matches where people are jumping around, and he goes way off to the side, and they still bring him back to the other side somehow.
big concession. The part where he becomes like an asshole.
Yeah,
like
he does this at least twice.
Yeah, that whole flip-flop thing was bad.
Yes.
I totally agree. But like overall, I think they did a really good job of selling the relationship between Kratos and Atreus. To like, I really believed that relationship. I thought like Atreus was a vehicle for Kratos' character arc.
Yes.
Like caring about, like learning to care about him and show it in a way that gels with his Kratos persona is kind of like what it's about, and I think they did that really effectively over the course of the game.
My problem with that is
like they're clearly setting him up to do more things in the future.
it makes me sad that there's going to be a bunch of sequels to this.
But like I think Atreus was a success. There were some fumbles here and there, as I said, with that one part of the story. But overall, I thought he was pretty effective in getting me to like care more about Kratos too. Like I think he served his place in the plot, I think, really well.
the vast majority of the game, though, until they reached that like transitory period that they wanted, it wasn't a relationship that I enjoyed or wanted to watch. Like it's like it felt like I was the unwitting. I felt like I was strapped into a chair and forced to watch shows on TLC about like weird families with a quirk and they're all very dysfunctional all the time. Like I assume there's a market for that, but like it was just uncomfortable, frankly.
Yeah,
for me to just be in a room with like a dad that
with
just
the
hated
caveat
everything.
that the dad is Kratos, though.
I mean, yeah.
That works for me. I don't, maybe, yeah.
Because similarly, but also very not similarly.
'Cause, like, can
I
you
felt
imagine,
I was
like, what-
watching Kindergarten Cop without any comedy? Like it felt like a really played straight Kindergarten Cop, and I didn't know that I didn't feel like that was something I wanted.
It's just like the idea of like, can you imagine if Kratos was your dad? Angle, like I don't know, that was interesting to me. And granted, they didn't really do anything that interesting with it, but like, it worked for me.
It would only be interesting to me if it was a comedy, not played as like a serious
I mean,
drama.
like there were like a
What if
couple
they
of
put jokes.
there were
in?
some like
So I'll give them that.
yeah, and they were like, I think they mostly landed too. Like the humor, a lot of like not all of it, but a lot of it felt pretty organic to me.
The non-dwarf based humor.
Yeah, well, yeah.
was good.
I think the dwarves are a miss, but like I kind of fall on the opposite side as you, JJ, where like I thought most of the characters were pretty good and well written. None of them were terribly deep, though. I will totally agree. Could have been better, but it all worked for me.
I also want to chalk that up a little bit. Yeah, you get your piece in. I'm sorry. To it being like its setting, because like this is like a world of mythology and gods where most of the characters are like assumed to have already been established.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. I don't think the writing is bad. I don't think they did a bad job at given their goals. I am just descriptively not interested in the goals that they chose to pursue for the vast majority of the game. It took way too long, to the point where I just would put this game down for days for other reasons, but partially for this reason. And because I was always afraid that I was just going to go back and just see like more of this dysfunctional relationship with like no even hints of Kratos like growing to be like a better person or any of them like loving each other in any way. Like it was always just very sad to me when I would go back and see this bad dad relationship.
Yeah, I do think the narrative is works against the medium of video games. I feel like the whole story of their like relationship is crippled a bit by like how 10 hours can go by if you just like doing video game things before like it progresses at all. So yeah, it's not perfect. Definitely has its flaws, but overall I thought it was pretty good.
It kind of magnifies the narrative problems that a lot of people retrospectively had about The Last of Us. Where like everyone plays The Last of Us the first time and they're like, oh shit, this is so good. And then like a year later you look back and you're like, oh wait, that was a great movie. That was a really good film.
I think playing this on easy mode, which is called like give me a story, is probably the most satisfying way to experience the story, as the name would imply.
Right, yeah. but which would really de-emphasize the parts of the game that I really actually did enjoy. Though.
That option is for specific people.
Yeah. I think the cherry on top of this and kind of what is emblematic of it to me, and I don't want to take anything away from you if you did enjoy like the narrative of this game. But
yeah, I didn't think it was anything great. But
no, agreed. It's fine.
I don't mean you specifically.
Yeah,
like, just sort of like the general
you.
Yeah, anyone who's listening, like
y'all.
The general y'all.
The general y'all. The royal y'all.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't want to like anyone who enjoys a piece of media. I'm not going to come in and be like, "You're wrong. It sucks." But the thing that keeps popping into my head is during the periods of time when Atreus was infected with the asshole syndrome.
Yes. The worst part of the game, for sure.
They just took all of his voice lines out and put them in a bin and replace them with the word whatever, and it destroyed me
Whatever.
inside. Like, because so frequently you have to be like, Atreus, just fucking shoot that thing. And he's like, whatever. Like, it's like, it punctuates the action in a way that's weird because it's non-committal. So it's like, whatever.
It's
whatever. Light bridge.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yes, that's very unfortunate. Another this story being delivered through the medium of video games, again, hindering it, because you hear that over and over again.
Yeah.
But it makes that part of the game feel really rushed, even more so than it already does, because there is one specific section where Atreus is just completely ignoring you, and you try to give him commands, and he just doesn't follow them. Mm-hmm. That tells that same story without any words.
And does it better.
And that's really good, but then they felt the need, or maybe they were mandated to put words in there, and it really hampers it. Like, if you stretched that part out more and just had it like a whole area where he just didn't listen to you and you had to work around that, could have been really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, at least on paper. It could have also been really annoying. But but it's in service of the narrative. You would want... I think it's okay to annoy the player in that kind of a scenario. But, like, that could have been really interesting. And they just don't do that.
That could be even mechanically interesting, right? Or if he still did his own shit. Like, if he still shot arrows and he still grappled people and did all the shit he could do, but none of them under your control, and you just had to react to him, that could be an interesting gameplay dynamic where you're kind of forced in the back seat and you have to play a little bit more reactively and a little bit less proactively because your son's doing his own god shit. Like, that could have been neat.
Yeah.
It'd be like Trico, which we all agreed was cool.
Yeah, and he does his own thing.
Yeah,
and he's cuter and not a bitch.
And also Trico never goes whatever.
He was saying that all the time. You just couldn't understand him.
Yeah. Every bark and howl just translates to a
whatever.
Text comes up on the bottom of the screen. Whatever, italicized.
My fucking tail. God damn it.
So I think the piece on that. Oh, the ending of the game.
Yes.
To circle back.
Mm-hmm. Oh, can we first? I know you want to talk about this, and we keep interrupting you. Can we first talk about the beginning, like the introduction of Baldur?
I know you want to talk about the end of the game,
but I feel like this
let's
makes
talk
sense.
About the beginning.
I feel like this makes sense to bring up first.
Yeah,
because I think this is the crowning jewel of the game.
Yes,
and it's when Baldur shows up, and you're like, does he know who Kratos is? Because he kind of just looks like a punk.
Oh yeah,
he looks like a just a regular guy who's a little bit muscular with a bunch of tattoos. He looks like
a guy who'd be impressive in reality.
Yeah, he looks like he would be a drunk, and he's even kind of acting like it. And then you're like, so does he know who Kratos is? He's picking a fight with him. And it's brief enough that you don't see where it's going, and then he just punches Kratos over the house. And it proceeds to do this whole, awesome spectacle boss fight.
Right.
And it's incredible.
It is really good. The only thing that I could think of that I would have done if I was writing this is have this be something that had happened before and they show it. Someone shows up to the house and is oh, get out of here, this is our land or whatever, and Kratos just tears him in half. And there's no resistance at all. He's just you don't want to pick a fight with me. He's well, I've got the county commission breathing down my neck. You don't have a permit for this land. And Kratos just well, and just removes his organs from his body in one motion. And then the second thing happens and you're oh, Kratos is at it again. Mm-hmm. It's a normal thing for him, and then it turns out to be a god.
Agreed. Cool. Even ties into my hypothetical rework of this whole design, which would have never happened because this game is obviously the product of thousands upon thousands of compromises and constraining decisions because there was a billion people working on the game with all different things so they wanted and ideas and goals and values, but whatever.
To emphasize that, did you sit through the credits? Because they roll for a comically long time. It's the scroll speed is really slow, and they roll for literally 45 minutes.
Yes.
I don't remember ever being taken to credits, but we'll move on.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, the goal is changed to go home, and if you go back to the cabin, it plays a scene, and then the credits roll.
Yeah.
Thor shows up.
Okay.
It's like a
He's
stinger.
cool.
We'll need this to be described to me because I just like stopped playing.
See, I did the same thing, and then somebody mentioned it on the internet, and I was like, "Oh yeah." I went to the other realms because I was excited to go to them, and then was disappointed by what was there, and then just turned the game off and never went back to the house. But anyway.
The unique mechanical identity that I would have wanted for this game in ideal God mode circumstances, God mode being me manipulating the game, or
Right.
the people who created it, like strings.
Not infinite health.
Yeah, on a marionette.
Puppet
Correct,
mastering.
Yes, correct. Would have been a version of this game that did not have like a weird boner for The Last of Us, but was instead a game that made you and your son feel like more empowered comical gods, especially early on. Maybe you still start at the level that you started at this game up, but I would have wanted a way like higher peak to like the spectacle curve by the end of it. That would have been like a better callback to a lot of the earlier games too. It made them feel like a more cohesive whole and not as big of a step. Like I wanted more scenes where I was just fucking ripping people apart and like using their limbs. I don't even normally like games that use that as the main appeal. Like I like all gamers in our generation have played the first level of God of War probably 3 times. And the rest of the game and other games in the series, it really dominated the narrative for a long time. And I'm not really attached to that kind of violence, but in this game, they could have had a really good opportunity to contrast like your humble beginnings in this nice little cabin with like actual ludicrous god powers, and you kind of never get there. You only get in cutscenes, in scripted events. A very common game problem, the level of like comical strength that's implied by the narrative, and I wanted that to be reflected in the gameplay more. I wanted to be able to just like throw a guy into the sky for like 5 seconds. That's just a move.
This is a problem that God of War always has, and all games featuring like a super strong protagonist always have, because like they show you in the gameplay picking up a fucking whole room made of gold and just be like, whoop, and thrown it up in the air, and it flips upside down. But, like, you don't just, like, atomize everyone that you punch, which is, like, it should be what happens. And it's implied that Atreus doesn't even know how strong you actually are.
Yeah.
Because, like, it like, escalates how much he sees you do over the course of the game. So, obviously, at no point was Kratos just, like, God Farmer. Best farm.
Honestly, I feel like this is one cool thing that they did. It feels like part of the problem with Atreus' understanding of himself and Kratos is that you were never in a circumstance where you had to flip over the giant room made of gold.
Right.
But like he also seems to lack context for how strong normal people are. Like when he sees you push and move the entire thing in the lake to reorient it, his reaction is like, wow, you really are strong. Like he's surprised, but he's surprised in the way that when like you find out someone has like a really cool like bar trick that they can do, not in like the like I have encountered divinity sense.
Yes,
Right.
I think it is implied that he was just raised in isolation.
Yeah, like he has no idea that it is entirely impossible for the vast majority of people to do anything resembling this. And that was a cool touch.
He still also interprets, like, Draugrs as a threat, though, when theoretically even he should be able to, like, break their necks. Like,
But he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But either way, the thing that I want, and this is, game design naivete alert here, could be, this just always seems like something that's so simple with these kind of problems. I always want games, and seem to enjoy games more, when you're ludicrously offensively powerful, but disproportionately defensively vulnerable. Like, naive as it might sound, I feel like there's a good version of this game that isn't, like, necessarily going to be bogged down with, like, why are these people a threat to you? Like, if you were just surrounded by, like, 10 of these guys and you weren't literally invulnerable, you could just do crazy spectacle shit with them. Right. That still seems like it'd be fun and entertaining. You could design a good system around.
It feels like there's like mixed up priorities to me, because it seems like it's sometimes they want to like emphasize the fact that like Kratos is older and different, but then they don't because he flips a temple upside down. And then like it's like they want to save a bunch of stuff for future games. Like there's a surprising lack of like spectacle bosses, given that that's what God of War is known for. Like you have the dragon and Baldur, and and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, like you just fight trolls over and over again. Or...
That's one of the things, just like a real minor point, is that I think that the enemy variety is actually really good. The boss variety is piss poor, and I don't understand.
See, the enemy variety felt really like limited to me, like because a lot of them are reskins.
They are all just humanoids.
Yeah, because the bestiary, like they get a little prompt on the screen every time like you fight a new enemy, and it kept popping up like a lot, and I'm like, bullshit, I just fought a new enemy. Like, 'cause so many enemies are just reskins.
The game just trying to convince you.
Yeah, I'm like, seems devious, game.
Interesting play, game.
Yeah.
Well, there's even like, because there's that one enemy type that just like, if you let them sit around for a while, they just recover all their health. And they wisely only use that enemy like 3 times in the whole game, because this game is not fun if you try and just play it really fast, and yet they put in a whole fucking realm that's just kill stuff really fast, and it's stupid and bad, and I don't know how nobody caught that. But so like, yeah, and he basically just acts as like a heavy regular dude, and there's not really anything special about it. But like, while I don't think the designs are particularly inspired, it is like enough mechanical difference where you do have to assess what's going on, at least like occasionally, especially pre Blades of Chaos.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. But the bosses all suck. Every one of them are stupid and really kind of like linear in a way that I wish they didn't. Like, the fact that every time that you kill a troll, you do the same thing where you like jump up and grab the pillar and pull it down is so... It's bad, 1, because it's weird to do the same thing over and over again, and 2, because it means they had to, every boss, they had to give a big pillar to. Which is like, why would you assume that when you go to hell and fight the bridge guardian guy,
that he would be a troll? With
a big pillar. They're like, yeah, he gets a fucking pillar. Oh, they all have pillars. What are you going to do about it? Why do they all have pillars?
Yeah, that's one of the places it stands out the most, is because, like, you're expecting the bridge keeper of fucking Helheim to be, like, a unique boss, and it's just a troll.
Yeah, it's just a regular-ass troll.
Smash
his pillar back.
Yeah, Odin was like, okay, you're an ice troll, so here's your pillar, and just smash people who try to come through here.
The fucking like Men in Black car, and like they pop the trunk and the thing expands out and it's just different pillars.
Yeah.
You pick one up.
Here's your ice pillar.
The Matrix like white room, and like the gun racks fly by, but they all just have like slightly different pillars.
Because like the first one you fight is in like a field that like has some ancient like ruined pillars. So it's like that's where he got his. But then the rest of them just have pillars.
You're so angry about this.
It is weird.
It's weird.
It's one of those things that when you stop and think about it, you're like, wait. Is it an extension of their body? Like all trolls have a pillar.
It's their birth pillar.
Yeah,
it's troll feces. It's just what
they harden their feces into a big pillar.
No, you can tell how old they are by how tall the pillar is.
Yeah, they just keep packing it on.
They're such hard asses that they just excrete individual logs of uniform density and solidity. Their gastrointestinal tract is a straight tube that just compacts everything like a trash compactor. They have to break it off like a candy cane.
And smash you with it.
Now,
Sometimes ghosts come out of it. Because why not?
It is bizarre that all but a couple of key story bosses are just trolls.
Yeah, it's super weird. Well,
like, I would cut out the 2 optional challenge realms and make more bosses.
Cut out the entire RPG mechanic system.
To an extent, I
yes
think
and no.
yes.
Okay, it depends on what we're classifying, because I'm not including like skill tree progression. I mean like stats on the armor.
I would cut the skill tree and keep the armor, personally.
Really? Why?
Because the skill tree, because you could just give you all the shit on the skill tree, and it's not really going to make you overpowered at the beginning. As we discussed, it's like things that you would already be doing anyway, but just a more natural version of it.
Okay, true.
Whereas the armor actually will like increase your. The armor makes it so that if you then leave an end game area and go back to an early game area, you get that feeling of being able to just like smash stuff, which they really want to do with like the Blades of Chaos thing, where they're just like, oh hey, you went back to your house, here's 1,000 guys, have fun.
Yeah. I think the implementation of those things in this game is super vanilla. Like, I feel like those on their own aren't bad inclusions in the game. I just don't think that they were done particularly well.
Yeah.
It's just, this is outside of that moment in which you are very, very right about, and I immediately am tempering my previous statement in light of that observation. This is not the kind of game generally where like you go back to old areas to perceive your growth. Like, this is mostly like a pretty linear, forward, conventional third-person action game.
Yeah.
What I wanted to maintain, and the reason why I prioritized the skill tree system, is just I wanted to make sure that the game continued to have a mechanism by which it could slowly kind of dribble out differences in kind in the combat, and not just like you have 10 more strength and vitality. Like, it's the incremental differences in the armor individually that I don't care about, and how much time disproportionately you have to spend just fiddling with it. Like, there's just, in the way that Doom, for example, Doom 2016 cut out so much of the bullshit in the way between you and murder.
Yeah.
I feel like this game adds lots of bullshit in between you and murder, even though you're also supposed to be like a very murder dude.
Yeah.
I feel like Doom guy and Kratos God of War. If you take Kratos not as presented in this game, but in like the third game, they're on roughly the same like murder tier. All things considered.
I mean, I would probably put Kratos. If this is a who would win situation,
No,
I feel like yeah, I know, but I feel like Kratos is almost at a higher murder tier. He has way more like feats of god killing, whereas like Doom guy just fights progressively larger demons and a one-time John Romero's severed head. But like, no.
Yeah, I feel like a streamlining of the skill tree would definitely be preferred.
Yeah.
There's like 8 skill trees. Like
there's way too many. Yeah,
Too many skill trees.
And I tend to like be a sucker for like armor crafting and upgrading. Like the reward of like the aesthetic differences definitely is the thing that hits like my pleasure centers in my brain.
You can be bare-chested Kratos or Kratos with armor on.
Dude, I loved Tyr's armor and hated having to change out of it for the better dwarf armor.
Yeah, better dwarf armor really sucked.
I mean, it was also cool, but like Tyr's armor was cooler looking.
Yeah.
This game, another thing that's mostly like the animation and like open quotes graphics department accomplishment.
Right.
This game has the best incremental improvement of visuals in terms of like the aesthetics of the things that you get as you upgrade that I've ever seen. Like, the difference between your end game acts and the starter game acts, if you look up pictures, is like comical. But there's just a completely, like, incredibly subtle incremental change in how all of those things look through the full duration of the game. We don't realize in the moment that, like, you've got this crazy fucking dope axe now in comparison. But if you look at them with context, you're like, oh shit, I've come such a long way.
Yeah, I also like the fact that when you add the pommels to it, they change, like, particle effects or, like, just the look of it.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that there's that much aesthetic has, like, anecdotal, like, evidence of this. Mm-hmm. You remember when you just walked in and in like 3 seconds they say, do I want this one or do I want the one with the cool black drips? And you were like, oh, you gotta go with the black drips. And I was like, yeah, you're right, I should go with the black drips. Ha ha ha. Because it looked better even though it was like statistically worse. I never changed it. Like, I liked the drippy axe so much that I just left it there for the whole game.
It was very cool.
Yeah, good point though, Andy. This game actually does a great job with the aesthetic components of its gear system, and that it's a benefit to having that. I just don't like the numbers, I guess. I literally just don't like the numbers.
Yeah.
There are too many.
Implementation wasn't very good, in my opinion.
So Baldur was cool at the beginning of the game.
He was, yes.
He was. It was actually very good, because they started doing, And they teased doing the thing that I wanted out of this game, which is comical contrast between the narrative tone and the stuff you're doing day to day with what Kratos is actually capable of. And then you just stopped doing that. You just didn't do it anymore.
Yeah. And I think that aesthetically speaking, from like the environments and stuff progress in a way that is very cool. Like this game has a womb level. I couldn't see shit in it because it was really dark.
Like a real womb would be.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's true. But it was cool. Like it was a cool concept, and like the world snake is cool, and I'm glad that it's like visible all the time because it is sort of more than just backdrop.
Yeah, I really loved that you can see it before you encounter it. Like when you first enter the lake, you can see it off to the left.
Yeah, like the ridges.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I also learned that the world serpent's name is Jormungandr from this game. And it weirdly stuck. I feel like I'll always remember that now.
I kind of wish I didn't always remember that from this point on.
I think that's a pretty like metal name.
Jormungandr.
Jormungandr.
Love Jormung. Sharp drop off at Gander. I feel like
it sounds like a stereotypical like Norse suffix.
It feels like
Normangander. I don't know. It sounds great. I like it.
It's like a dwarf name that I would make up, specifically because of the drop-off in my mind. Because it's like, I would start at the strong, like, Gander over the 2 seconds that I'd have to... Strong Yorman, excuse me. Over the 2 seconds I'd have to consider it in my head before I had to say something to you guys.
Yeah.
And then I would just be like, Gander.
See, that's the thing. You have to pronounce it. You have to hit all 4 syllables hard. And if you tumble down on the Gander, then you're not, like... It's just not the same.
It's just confidence. You need, my bad.
It's Jormungandr.
Yeah,
not Jormungandr.
Imagine Mimir saying it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll sound much more natural.
Yeah.
That's true.
It was very good.
If it makes you feel more comfortable, you could call him YM Gander.
It's
For sure.
It's too similar to like... way too close to WD Gaster.
That's what
for
I
me.
was getting at.
I hate you.
You just like got that joke.
Oh, I'm sorry that I didn't realize I wasn't on your joke level.
I'm actually really glad because you got the joke and then said it because I was expecting no one to get the joke. So,
but
Hollow Knight's my favorite game now. You have to update your references,
you
Chad.
need to get the that terrible format where it's like friendship ended with Undertale. Now Hollow Knight is my new best friend.
Have you ever looked up the history to that meme?
Oh yeah, I've read that probably like 10 times in my life. It's very, very good.
It's a wonderful journey.
So one thing in the narrative that I thought was really weird is how much they set up, oh shit, Thor and or Odin is coming for your ass, and they just don't.
No, they never come
Like,
for your ass.
there is an excuse for at least like part of the game where Freya puts the seal on your neck that like shields you from their vision. But once that goes away, like you fucking kill both of Thor's children, and then at the end of the game you kill Baldur, who's Odin's son, and you think just like Kratos rolling into the Norse mythology land and fucking shit up would be cause enough for Odin to be like, oh shit, I should do something about that. And on paper, totally thumbs up, right decision to not blow your load in this game if you're going to do more.
Yeah.
But it's set up so hard.
Yes. There is too much. It's not an undertone.
Like, you kill Modi, and then you go back to the Lake of Nine, and there's, like, a thunderstorm, and then Mimir's like, oh, shit, like...
Thor's not happy.
Yeah, like, Odin's not going to take kindly to you killing his kin, and it's, like, super ominous, and you're like, oh, shit, here it goes. Now the real God of War stuff's going to start happening now. And then it just proceeds to not
happen. No.
Yeah, you just
that
keep
was
fighting
weird.
guys.
That was very weird.
I heard it was
Trolls with
weird.
pillars.
Yes.
Probably because they thought they might do it, and then got their attention distracted by another system that they wanted to make. Or another thing to
It
do.
feels intentional to me. Like, it feels like they definitely had the post-credit scene in mind when they started the fucking game. Like, oh, it's going to end with Thor showing up.
Yeah, okay. So you're going to need to describe that to me, but let's take it, like, chronologically with the rest of the game, because basically we end up the excuse they give for Odin not just immediately just putting
it
a
makes
giant
sense.
foot
Yeah.
coming from the sky and just turning into a red
It makes sense
paste.
that he wouldn't immediately show up, but once you start killing
Right.
people,
Well, the excuse given in the narrative for it is that he cannot open the door to the gate to Jotunheim, right?
yeah,
And so, naturally, they have you go through this whole quest to open the gate to Jotunheim.
yeah.
Then you fight Baldur and kill him in a really anticlimactic boss fight where you just kind of like do the same stuff that you did, and he's a Metroid Prime boss where he changes color and you have to match him, except you match the opposite. He's an Ikaruga boss.
Okay, fine. This is
Yes.
legitimate. I take this.
It did
And
have a cool background element
that's true.
where
with the
Freya
big giant.
animates the dead giant corpse.
Yes, that was very.
That should have played a larger role in the fight.
But then, after all of that, and you kill him, and Freya's like, I hate you now. Goodbye. And walks away. And nothing happens. You're like, oh, if nothing's happening now, it means they're really setting up for the final boss. I can't wait for this final boss. Not knowing you already fought the final boss. You've beaten the game and don't know it at this point. You then do the narrative thing, which is touching and cool, and I'm fine with it. Which is as much as I will grant it. And you go up, you see the credit sequence, and you come back down, and then Odin comes in, and you gotta fight Thor or fight Odin or do something.
That
would never
You
happen.
thought it'd be like Metal Gear Solid 5, where like there's just like 3 different credit sequences?
Well, I was just expecting you to come. I thought it was a fake out credit sequence. Like, legitimately, I thought it was a fake out, and you were gonna come out, and he's gonna be like, "Thanks for opening the gates, bitch." And then Godfist just like punches you, and you're like,
Okay,
"Ooh."
so-
teeth come out.
So what happens is once you scatter the ashes and gameplay resumes, new objective shows up. It's like go home. So once you go back, they're like, oh, we're so exhausted, and they like go to bed. And thunderstorm, lightning crashes outside, and they get up and they go to the door, and it's like dude in cloak, mysterious, and then like there's like, who are you, Kratos, and then he just like throws his like cloak aside. It's like from an angle, it's like behind him, like on like focused like on his hip, and you can see Kratos, in the background. It's a nice
Right.
shot. And he just like throws the cloak aside, and his Mjolnir's on his hip, and then it cuts to credits. And after the credits, it resumes, and it was like a vision, like a dream that Atreus had, that Thor's gonna show up soon. So that's how that happens. But I totally agree. It makes way more sense for Thor to show up after they scatter the ashes, where you have a boss fight, and Thor just like kicks your ass. And then like takes Atreus or something, and then it's like cliffhanger. Ooh, can't wait for the next God of War.
Right, because they choose to end on a cliffhanger still. Like, it
Yeah.
is still a cliffhanger, but it's just a worse
Yeah,
cliffhanger.
because I do kind of, it feel like the fight with Baldur feels like a good capstone on like the narrative, but it does kind of like, it's kind of hard to explain, but like game wise, it kind of doesn't really feel like a final boss.
Right, it's not really
It does
a
feel like
culmination
it's
of
missing like the cherry, the final boss cherry on top of the tallest peak in Jotunheim.
Not enough spectacle, not enough like different systems that had been incorporated.
Yeah, like in comparison to like the fight at the beginning, the fight with Baldur at the end, it's not even half as fancy.
It's
like
shorter
it's just like a
even.
regular fight, but with a giant corpse in the background, which is
very
cool.
rarely
yeah,
does a thing.
yeah, which doesn't even on hard mode. It like barely interfered with the fight. Like I think it was maybe like 3 times it gave me some hits done,
Right.
and it was like a non-thing. But yeah, it definitely feels like the ball was dropped there.
It really
I
was.
agree.
Before we end, do we have another thing we want to say?
phone check.
I did like that the mistletoe arrow was paid off.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That actually, probably the best narrative beat in the entire game as
Yeah,
far as I'm concerned.
I like completely blanked on a thing or like completely misinterpreted what happened with that or just forgot something. Who gives you the mistletoe arrows?
It's the taller dwarf.
Sindri?
Sindri.
Because I thought like he gave you like the like lightning arrow bowstring, and then after that you go to Freya's house, and she like freaks out about the arrows, and I thought like she would like knew because he had the lightning string that we'd killed a dragon, and she was pissed about that.
Right.
Like I complete
an animal or something.
I feel like here's some mistletoe arrows was kind of like glossed over.
Yeah.
Like that felt really weird. Like that confused me.
Mistletoe also kind of not a threatening substance conceptually.
But that's
Right.
Accurate to the mythology that
I know.
Yeah, mistletoe is Baldur's like what breaks the spell on him.
I did not know any of that.
Yeah.
So
if you're a nerd, you would have seen that coming.
I'm just saying, in modern day, in the several centuries that have passed, since
it
the
makes
creation
it
of those
feel
myths.
like mythic and cool though that like it's mistletoe was the thing that like breaks the curse. Like I thought that was neat.
I'm fine with it as a thing. I think the payoff is good because they do take time to show you the scene of him fixing it, and the length of time that they go between that scene and when it becomes relevant, I think is a well-considered length of time and actually makes it pay off.
And him fixing the strap feels like a good, organic, like father-son bonding moment. Mm-hmm. So I also agree, like thumbs up on that.
More arrow-based
love.
plot, love in the next God of War game. Because I know Santa Monica Studios, the one thing that they have to do right now is listen to this podcast.
Get you some of that air romance.
Also, what do you think about the reveal that Atreus is Loki?
Ugh.
I honestly wasn't even 100% sure that they meant that in like the literal sense. That it's like Loki, like Loki, or if he was just named after Loki.
I think that they do mean it that way because in the mythology, like Loki is adopted by Odin. Like he is not actually Odin's son, so it like actually makes sense.
Son of a frost giant.
Yeah.
Anyone with even Marvel familiarity will get that now.
I
slept through like 90% of the second Thor movie.
So it actually makes sense. So I think I don't like love it or anything, but I thought that was cool that it actually plays into the mythology.
Makes the next game really predictable though.
So well, they've already done like Loki plays like a huge part in a lot of the mythology, and a lot of those events have already happened in this game, so I don't think they're going to go by the book at all.
Do we have final thoughts?
God of War is the Drew Barrymore of games.
All right, hit me. Hit me with that metaphor that I'm sure I won't have any complaints with.
We're transitioning to celebrities instead of food now.
Right.
I couldn't think of a food that really matched all of these different traits. It's fine. I have no complaints, but it's kind of dated. It's frequently like stretched beyond its conceivable abilities in a bunch of different directions that I didn't need to go into. Third thing.
Since we've made final thoughts like a regular thing, this might be the hardest game to come up with final thoughts for me, because as I opened with, like, this game's very good. Like, I enjoyed my time with it. I engaged with like the extra content. Like I action adventure games are like my favorite kind of games, and I feel like there aren't enough of them because they tend to be like one of the more expensive kind of games to make. So I enjoy my time with it a lot, but this game, I think it overreaches, and it feels like designed by committee in that it just has so many systems and features that it gets bogged down in. So like overall I feel really positive about it, but at the same time I could complain about it for a long time. So like it's really weird, the kind of like place that this game settles, you know, among other video games. So I'll just end by having that messy string of thoughts be my final ones.
Just like the game.
Yes.
I think this game ends up being sort of a kitchen sink type game, and I think that the chance to rework God of War into like a modern, like with a more modern sensibility is something that I think they kind of jumped at the chance at and ended up leaving more sort of original God of War in it and less innovation than was probably necessary to make it more relevant. The game still sold really well and is basically adored by most people who play it, which speaks at the very least for the quality of the polish that they put on this.
This seems like the kind of game that the average person would go nuts for.
Completely agree. I wouldn't not necessarily go nuts, but like this is a really good example of a kind of game that's going to do worse with critics than it is with audiences. Like this game is going to get sequels. This game is already going to be a trilogy. I can feel the trilogy coming.
I mean, it's one of the games that got a like signature PlayStation 4 design. Like obviously, like it's an IP and it's a big one. And I think that they did a good job of making a game that is inherently a playable game. It's not a game that I would recommend to anyone because one, they already know about it. And
Fair.
And two, it doesn't do anything that like there's no hook, there's no like pitch I can give to make the game like really grab somebody just on a conceptual level. And none of that is to discount the amount of fun that I had with the game because it genuinely was a very fun experience. And so I just want to put in the words of Kratos himself, God of War, you aren't bad, be better. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
Fucking head explodes from emotion.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Baba Is You, a game that I had seen pictures of, like a Bigfoot walking in the night, and didn't really know a whole lot about, but as of the recording of this, have now played for 6 hours, and I fucking love it. It's really good. And so join us for that. It's a puzzle game, by the way. If you want to get a hold of us, all of our contact information can be found at noclippodcast.com or on our sister site, splattershot.pro. While you're there, you can see all of our old episodes, go to our YouTube channel, check out our new Discord, which the discussion currently appears to be about the game Bloodstained, which I haven't played yet, but everyone is doing a tremendous job of selling me on it. So there's that, I guess. You guys got anything?
You've seen pictures of Bigfoot walking in the night?
You haven't?
Make sure you... I can't... There's no... Bigfoot... That subscribe button.
Make sure you ring that bell when you see a Bigfoot at your church.
I was thinking something about like the rune chests, like you have to like ring the bell.
Oh, that's so good
to open the rune chest.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But it was too wordy.
Yeah. In order to get that Iden apple, that is the subscribe button.
Flip the temple, which is the comment section, upside down.
With your powerful takes and opinions.
Leave Mimir's tales in the comment section.
Oh, what does Kratos
Comments are for the boat, boy.
What does Kratos call his stories?
Oh, short and... I want to say pertinent. Kratos would say pertinent never.
No. Too long of a word.
Purposeful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Short and purposeful stories. Leave those in the comment section. Leave Mimir's tales in the Discord.
Yes.
Link in the description. I just point down when I say that because I've seen so many people
You've seen
do
YouTubers do it?
Yeah. Goodbye.
What if I rolled it down to have like the bro sleeves?
Even better.
I actually like the sleeves.
Yep.
Yeah.
The thing I like it too.
As a bit of a bro myself.
They have nothing to like fasten it, so it just kind of like loosely hangs, and I don't like that.
that was your phone. You managed to throw it in exactly the same position where your phone felt like your sleeves.
Exactly.
when you
Yes.
rolled them up.
It's a real sleeve position.
It's in a sleeve.
It's a new phrase. New no clip phrase.
The sleeve position.
Yes, the sleeve position.
I feel like there's.
That
gotta
means it's
be-
in
It's
like
the
a.
ultra pro.
It's in like a.
positions.
It's in like a kind of precarious situation. Maybe not.
Yeah, where it's not actually likely to be a problem, but it feels like it'll be a problem all
Exactly.
the
That's
time.
what a sleeve situation is.
Yeah, very good.